Marlene Ashford had always been the woman with answers, the one her friends called when they needed brutal honesty, wrapped in designer heels and a perfectly timed glass of wine. So when she found herself standing in her marble bathroom at 2 in the morning, staring at her husband's phone like it was a live grenade, the irony wasn't lost on her. 3 months ago, she'd told her colleague Jennifer, with all the confidence of someone who'd never been tested, that any woman who stayed after infidelity was weak. She'd used words like self-respect and dignity. She'd been so sure, so goddamn sure. The phone buzzed in her trembling hand, and another message appeared on the screen. Her husband's phone. Her husband's secret. Her husband's betrayal. The message was short, almost casual. Miss you already. Tonight was amazing. There was a heart emoji. Marlene felt her own heart crack in a way she didn't know was possible, like ice splitting under pressure, sharp and sudden and irreversible. She'd picked up Grant's phone to silence an alarm. That's all. A simple, innocent gesture at 2:13 in the morning because his alarm was blaring and he was dead asleep beside her, snoring softly like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just destroyed 15 years of marriage with someone named Natalie, whose contact photo showed a young woman with auburn hair and a bright smile. The kind of smile that probably lit up conference rooms. The kind Grant used to say he loved about Marlene, back when he still noticed her smiles. Her hands shook as she scrolled up. The messages went back weeks, months, maybe. She couldn't breathe properly. The bathroom suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. Her reflection in the mirror looked wrong. Same dark hair, same hazel eyes, same expensive skincare routine that promised to fight aging. But something fundamental had shifted. The woman staring back at her was a cliché, a statistic, one of those wives who find out their husband has been living a double life while she meal prepped and color coordinated the family calendar, and believed, truly believed, that they were happy. You're working late again? One message from Marlene to Grant read, sent 3 weeks ago. His response had been immediate. Big project deadline. You know how it is, babe. But scrolling down, she found his real conversation from that same night. Can't wait to see you. Told her I'm working late. The casual cruelty of it made her stomach turn. She set the phone down on the marble countertop with exaggerated care, like it might explode. Then she gripped the edge of the sink and tried to remember how to breathe like a normal person. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Except normal people's worlds weren't imploding at 2:17 in the morning on a random Wednesday in October. Grant stirred in the bedroom. She heard him roll over, the sheets rustling. For 15 years, she'd slept beside this man. 15 years of shared mortgage payments and inside jokes and that terrible vacation in Cancun where they both got food poisoning and laughed about it for months afterward. 15 years of building a life that felt solid, permanent, real. And apparently, for some unknown portion of that time, he'd been building something else entirely, with a woman named Natalie who sent heart emojis and reminisced about amazing nights. Marlene caught sight of herself in the mirror again. Her silk pajamas, the ones Grant had given her last Christmas, suddenly felt like a costume. She looked put together even in crisis. Hair still perfect. No mascara smudges because she'd done her full nighttime routine before bed, like she always did. She almost laughed. Here she was, discovering her marriage was a lie, and she still had on her retinol serum. The absurdity of it hit her sideways. This was supposed to happen to other women. Hairless women. Women who let themselves go. Women who didn't prioritize their marriages. She'd done everything right, hadn't she? The phone buzzed again. Another message from Natalie. Sweet dreams. Handsome. Marlene's vision blurred. Not from tears. She refused to cry. Not yet. The blur came from rage, pure and white-hot, the kind that makes your hands shake and your teeth clench and your entire body feel like it might combust. She thought about all the times she'd sat across from friends, listening to their tearful confessions about cheating husbands, and she'd felt that quiet superiority, that unspoken judgment. She'd never said it out loud, but she'd thought it. How could you stay? How could you even consider it? Where's your self-respect? She'd been so certain she'd walk away, pack a bag, call a lawyer, and never look back. Clean, simple, dignified. But standing there in her bathroom at 2:23 in the morning, Marlene realized with a sinking horror that nothing about this was simple. The house they'd renovated together, the business connections they shared, her parents who adored Grant like the son they never had, their friends who saw them as the stable couple, the ones who made it work. The life they'd built wasn't just about love. It was mortgages and shared bank accounts and that ridiculous argument they'd had last month about whether to refinance. It was his mother's china in the dining room hutch, and her promotion celebration where he'd been genuinely proud. It was complicated and messy, and so much harder to untangle than she'd ever imagined. She picked up the phone again. Her finger hovered over Natalie's contact. He could text her, confront her, ask her what the hell she thought she was doing with someone's husband. But what would that solve? Natalie probably didn't even know Grant was married. Or maybe she did, and didn't care. Women like that existed. Marlene had judged them too, once upon a time, from her high horse of moral certainty. God, she'd been insufferable. She could see that now. All those coffee dates where she'd dispensed advice, like she had all the answers. You deserve better. Once a cheater, always a cheater. I could never. Except here she was, and the only thing she knew for certain was that she had no idea what to do. Grant's breathing changed. He was waking up. Marlene's heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She had maybe 30 seconds before he'd notice she wasn't in bed. 30 seconds to decide whether to confront him now, at 2:27 in the morning, or to pretend she didn't know. To crawl back into bed beside him and wait for morning. Or next week, or never. The thought of lying next to him, knowing what she knew, made her skin crawl. But the thought of blowing up their entire life in the middle of the night felt impossible, too. She heard him sit up. Marlene? His voice was rough with sleep, concerned. He'd always been a light sleeper, always noticed when she got up for water or couldn't sleep. That attentiveness had once felt like love. Now it felt like surveillance. Baby, you okay? The casual endearment made her want to scream. How dare he? How dare he call her baby, while someone else texted him sweet dreams? She stared at the phone in her hand, then at the bathroom door that separated her from the man she thought she knew. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her marriage, about what she would and wouldn't tolerate, hung in the balance of the next 60 seconds. She'd spent years watching other women make choices she'd sworn she'd never make. She'd been so confident in her own strength, her own boundaries, her own unshakable sense of right and wrong. But confidence, she was learning, is easy when you're not the one being tested. Theory is simple. Reality is brutal. And the woman staring back at her from the mirror, phone in hand and marriage in ruins, looked nothing like the woman who'd been so sure of her answers just 3 months ago. Marlene? Grant's voice again, closer now. He was getting out of bed. In a moment, he'd be at the bathroom door, and she'd have to decide. Confront him or pretend? Explode or implode? Be the woman she'd always claimed she'd be? Or discover who she actually was when the worst finally happened? Her finger still hovered over Natalie's message, the evidence of betrayal glowing in her hand, like a secret that could never be unknown. And for the first time in her adult life, Marlene Ashford, the woman with all the answers, had absolutely no idea what came next. The bathroom door opened before Marlene could make a decision. Grant stood there in his boxers and old college t-shirt, hair sticking up on one side, looking concerned and sleepy, and so achingly familiar that for a split second she forgot why her heart was racing. Then she remembered. The phone felt heavy as concrete in her hand. "Hey, what's wrong?" He stepped into the bathroom, reaching for her. She flinched, actually flinched. His hand froze midair, confusion crossing his face. "Babe, you're scaring me. Are you sick?" The genuine worry in his voice made everything worse. He was good at this, the concerned husband routine. She wondered how many times he'd perfected that expression while lying straight to her face about working late. Marlene looked down at the phone, then back up at him. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. He'd imagined this moment before, in that abstract way everyone does, finding out about an affair. She'd always pictured herself calm, cold, devastating, delivering the kind of cutting lines that would make him crumble. Instead, she stood there mute, her entire vocabulary apparently deleted from her brain. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Grant's eyes followed her gaze to the phone in her hand. His phone. She watched the realization dawn on his face in slow motion. The confusion melted into something else. Recognition. Fear. Then, horrifyingly, resignation. Like some part of him had been waiting for this moment. That look told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was something he'd been carrying. Something he'd known would eventually surface. Marlene. He said her name like a prayer, or an apology, or both. She held up her hand, stopping him. If he touched her right now, she might shatter completely. Her voice, when it finally came, sounded nothing like her own. Flat. Detached. The voice of a woman reading ingredients off a cereal box. "The night was amazing. Miss you already." She watched his face drain of color. Sweet dreams. Handsome. Each word landed like a physical blow. She could see him processing, calculating, trying to figure out how much she knew. "Let me explain." The three most useless words in the English language. Marlene let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so jagged. "Explain what?" "Exactly. Explain how you've been sleeping with your co-worker while I've been home color-coding our meal plan? Explain how you told her you were working late while telling me the exact same lie? Please, Grant. I'm dying to hear the explanation for that." He reached for her again, and she stepped back, hitting the sink. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto the marble counter. They both stared at it like it was alive. "How long?" Her voice cracked on the question. She hated that. Hated showing weakness. But she needed to know. Needed to understand the scope of the betrayal. Was this weeks? Months? Years? How long had she been the fool? Grant ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd seen 1,000 times, usually when he was stressed about a deadline or worried about a project. Now she'd forever associate it with this moment, with the beginning of the end. 6 months. The answer came out barely above a whisper. 6 months. Half a year. While she'd been planning their anniversary trip, while she'd been excited about her promotion, while she'd been living in what she thought was a solid marriage. 6 months. She repeated it, testing the words. They felt foreign. Impossible. "You've been lying to me for 6 months." It wasn't a question. Grant stood there, shoulders slumped, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Good. She hoped he felt as small as she did right now, as foolish, as utterly demolished. It didn't mean anything. Another classic line. Marlene felt hysteria bubbling up. "Oh, well then. That changes everything. 6 months of sneaking around didn't mean anything. I feel so much better now." The sarcasm felt good. Sharp. A weapon she could actually use. "Tell me, Grant, at what point does it start meaning something? A year? 2? Or does it never mean anything as long as you keep telling yourself that?" He flinched. "That's not what I meant. I mean, it wasn't supposed to happen. We were working late on the Riverside project and things they got complicated." Complicated. What a convenient word. Marlene wanted to throw something, preferably at his head. "No, Grant. Calculus is complicated. Taxes are complicated. Keeping your pants on around your coworker is actually pretty simple. Don't." His voice had an edge now, defensive, like he had any right to be defensive. "Don't act like you're perfect. You've been so focused on work, on your career, on everything except us. When was the last time we actually talked? Really talked? When was the last time you looked at me like I mattered?" And there it was, the justification, the pivot, making this somehow her fault. Marlene felt something cold settle in her chest. "So, this is on me? I worked too hard. Therefore you had to sleep with someone else? Is that the logic we're going with?" Her voice was rising now, all pretense of calm gone. "I'm sorry my career success was so threatening that you had to validate yourself with a 20-something who probably thinks you're sophisticated because you know how to order wine. She's 32. The words were out before he could stop them. Marlene stared at him. "She's 32, she repeated slowly. "Thank you for that clarification. That makes it so much better. For a second I thought you were pathetic, but now that I know she's a mature 32, well, clearly this is just a meeting of intellectual equals." Grant's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. Then help me understand. Explain to me what I'm missing. Because from where I'm standing, my husband of 15 years has been having an affair for 6 months, and somehow I'm supposed to understand that." She was shaking now, adrenaline and rage making her hands tremble. "Do you love her?" The question hung in the air between them. Marlene hadn't meant to ask it, didn't want to know the answer, but it was out there now, demanding a response. Grant's face did something complicated. Not quite denial, not quite admission. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe. I think so. I don't know." Those words hit harder than any definitive yes would have. At least yes was clean, honest. This was worse. This was him not even being sure, throwing away their marriage for something he couldn't even name. Marlene felt the last thread of her composure snap. "Get out." Her voice was quiet now, deadly calm. "Get out of this bathroom. Get out of our bedroom. I don't care where you go. Sleep on the couch. Sleep in your car. Sleep at Natalie's for all I care. But get away from me right now. Marlene, please. We need to talk about this." She laughed, actually laughed. It sounded unhinged even to her own ears. "Talk about it? Now you want to talk? You've had 6 months to talk, Grant. 6 months of opportunities to be honest, to tell me you were unhappy, to suggest counseling, to do literally anything except sneak around behind my back like a coward. I was trying to protect you." The words were so absurd that Marlene couldn't even formulate a response. She just stared at him. "Protect me? You were protecting me by having an affair? That's fascinating. What an incredibly selfless sacrifice. Thank you so much for protecting me from the truth about what a liar you are." Grant's face hardened. "Fine. You want honesty? Here it is. You've been so wrapped up in being perfect, Marlene, perfect executive, perfect house, perfect life, that you stopped seeing me, stopped caring about what I needed. Everything became about your schedule, your meetings, your career trajectory. When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer?" The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. She had been focused on work. The promotion had consumed her. But that didn't justify this. Nothing justified this. So, your response to feeling neglected was to stick it to your coworker instead of talking to your wife? Very mature. Very adult. I'm sure that solved everything. She pushed past him, needing space, needing air that didn't smell like his cologne and lies. He followed her into the bedroom. "I'm not saying it was right. I know it was wrong. But we weren't happy, Marlene. Be honest. We haven't been happy for a while." She spun around. "I was happy. Or at least, I thought I was. Clearly, I was delusional. Clearly, while I was happy in our marriage, you were building a backup plan. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Grant? Paint me a picture. Help me understand the nuance of betrayal." Her voice was pure acid now, all the hurt crystallizing into anger because anger was safer. Anger didn't make her feel like her entire world was crumbling. Was it romance? Did she make you feel young again? Did she hang on your every word about stress factors and load-bearing walls? Stop it. Why? Does the truth hurt? Does having your affair examined in the harsh light of day make it less romantic? Less exciting? She was being cruel now, and she didn't care. Wanted him to hurt the way she was hurting. Tell me, when you were inside her, did you think about me at all? Or were you too busy feeling alive and appreciated? Grant's face went white. That's enough. No, it's not nearly enough. You had 6 months with her. I get one night to rage about it. That seems fair, don't you think? She grabbed a pillow from their bed and threw it at him. It was pathetic as far as gestures went, but it felt good. Get out. Take your phone and your lies and your midlife crisis and get out of my sight. He caught the pillow, stood there holding it like a shield. Where am I supposed to go? I truly don't give a damn. Call Natalie. I'm sure she'll console you. Tell her how mean your wife is being, how unreasonable, how she just doesn't understand. Marlene's voice broke on the last word. She turned away, refusing to let him see tears. Just go. The silence that followed felt endless. She heard him move, heard him gathering things, his phone from the bathroom, clothes from the dresser, keys from the nightstand. Each sound felt like another ending, another piece of their life together being dismantled. When he spoke again, his voice was tired, defeated. I never meant to hurt you. Marlene closed her eyes. Well, you did. Congratulations. You destroyed 15 years in 6 months. That's quite an achievement. She heard the bedroom door close. Then his footsteps on the stairs. The front door opening and closing. His car starting in the driveway. The sound of him leaving fading into the pre-dawn quiet. And then she was alone. Completely, utterly alone in the house they'd bought together. The bed they'd shared for 15 years. The life she'd thought was real. Marlene sank onto the edge of the mattress. 3 hours ago, she'd been asleep next to her husband. Now she was a woman whose marriage had just imploded at 2:47 on a Wednesday morning in October. The woman who always had answers sat in her perfect bedroom in her silk pajamas and had absolutely no idea what happened next. Marlene didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed until the sky started turning gray, then moved to the living room couch, where at least she wouldn't be surrounded by the ghost of Grant's presence. The house felt different now. Larger, emptier. Every corner held a memory that had been recontextualized by betrayal. The kitchen where they'd had coffee every morning. The hallway where they'd hung their wedding photos. The couch where they'd watched countless movies. Her feet in his lap. All of it tainted now. By 7 in the morning, she'd made coffee and stared at it for 20 minutes without drinking any. Her phone sat on the coffee table, silent. No calls from Grant. No texts. Part of her had expected him to reach out, to apologize again, to beg. The silence felt like another abandonment, like he'd just driven away from 15 years and moved on with his Wednesday. She wondered if he'd gone to Natalie's. The thought made her stomach turn. Was he there right now, being comforted, playing the victim? Poor Grant. His unreasonable wife kicked him out just for a little indiscretion. Her phone finally buzzed at 7:43, but it wasn't Grant. It was Ivy Callahan, her best friend since college. Coffee this morning? I need to vent about the Henderson account. Normal. Such a beautifully normal message. Marlene stared at it, trying to remember what normal felt like. Yesterday she would have said yes, met Ivy at their usual place, complained about work, and laughed about something trivial. Today she couldn't imagine pretending everything was fine, but she also couldn't imagine telling the truth. Not yet. Once she said it out loud, it became real, official, the kind of thing that would spread through their social circle like wildfire. Grant and Marlene are having problems. Did you hear? He cheated. 6 months. Can you believe it? She could practically hear the whispers, the pitying looks. The same looks she'd given other women in this situation. God, the karma was almost poetic. Marlene typed back, "Can't this morning." Swamped with work, the lie came easily, too easily. She was already protecting him, protecting them, protecting the illusion of their perfect marriage, even though it had shattered hours ago. Why? Why was her first instinct to cover this up? She deleted the message before sending it. Tried again. Rain check? Not feeling great. Better. Vague enough to be true. He felt awful, just not in the way Ivy would assume. The response came immediately. Feel better. Soup and sympathy available if needed. Heart emoji. Marlene's eyes stung. Ivy would be horrified when she found out. Ivy, who'd been at their wedding, who'd helped them move into this house, who thought Grant was one of the good ones. They all did. Grant was charming, reliable, the kind of man who remembered birthdays and helped elderly neighbors with their groceries. Apparently, he was also the kind of man who carried on an affair for half a year while maintaining the perfect husband facade. Marlene forced herself to shower, to go through the motions of getting ready, even though she had no intention of going anywhere. The hot water felt good, punishing. She scrubbed her skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of being touched by someone who'd been touching someone else. The thought made her physically ill. He'd slept beside him, been intimate with him, never once suspected. What did that say about her? About her judgment? About her ability to see what was right in front of her face? Wrapped in a towel, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Same face, different woman. The Marlene from yesterday wouldn't recognize the Marlene from today. Yesterday's Marlene had been confident, secure, self-righteous, if she was being honest. She'd judged other women so harshly. Jennifer, whose husband had an affair 5 years ago. Jennifer had stayed, worked it out. Marlene had smiled and nodded and said all the supportive things, but inside she'd been thinking, I would never. I have more self-respect than that. The memory made her cringe. How arrogant she'd been. How certain that she was somehow immune to the messiness of other people's marriages. Like her relationship with Grant was fundamentally different. Better. Stronger. Built on something more solid than everyone else's. What a joke. What a spectacular, humiliating joke. She wasn't special. Her marriage wasn't special. She was just another woman standing in a bathroom trying to figure out what the hell to do now. Her phone rang. Grant. She stared at his name on the screen, her thumb hovering over the answer button. Part of her wanted to hear his voice, wanted him to have the perfect words that would make this make sense. The other part wanted to throw the phone across the room. She let it go to voicemail, listened to the notification ping, waited. Then, hating herself, she played the message. Marlene. His voice sounded rough, like he'd been crying or not sleeping. Good. I'm at a hotel downtown, the Riverside Inn, room 214. A pause. Heavy breathing. I know you don't want to talk to me. I get it. But we need to figure this out. We have to talk eventually. About everything. About what happens next. Another pause. Longer. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know. But I am. I'm so sorry. The message ended. Marlene played it again. Then a third time, analyzing his tone like it would reveal some hidden truth. He sounded sorry. But sorry for what? Sorry he'd done it? Or sorry he'd been caught? There was a difference. A massive, fundamental difference. She wanted to believe he regretted the affair itself, that he'd been consumed with guilt for 6 months. But the messages on his phone hadn't read like guilt. They'd read like happiness, like someone enjoying a secret life. She got dressed slowly, jeans and a sweater. Nothing fancy. The kind of outfit that said she wasn't trying, wasn't performing. She pulled her hair into a ponytail and skipped makeup entirely. Another first. Marlene Ashford never left the house without makeup. It was armor, polish, the professional woman's war paint. Today she couldn't be bothered. Today she looked exactly how she felt. Exhausted, betrayed. lost. At 9:30, her mother called. Marlene almost didn't answer, but her mother was persistent, would just keep calling. "Hi, Mom." She tried to sound normal, failed miserably. Her mother's radar was too good. "What's wrong?" Straight to it. No pleasantries. That was her mother. Direct, practical. The kind of woman who'd raised 3 daughters through a divorce and come out stronger. Nothing. Just tired. "Marlene Catherine Ashford, I've known you for 38 years. Don't insult my intelligence." The full name. Never good. "Is it work?" Marlene closed her eyes. She could tell her mother. Should tell her mother. But the words wouldn't come. Once she told her mother, it would be real in a different way. Her mother would have opinions. Strong ones. Her mother had never particularly liked Grant. Thought he was too smooth. Too charming. "Just a rough night. Grant and I had a fight. Not technically a lie. They had fought. About what? Work stuff. You know how it is." Her mother made a sound that clearly indicated she didn't buy it. "If you need to talk, I'm here. But if you're going to lie to me, at least make it convincing." Then she hung up. Classic. Marlene sat there holding her phone, feeling like a child who'd been caught sneaking cookies. The day stretched ahead of her, like a prison sentence. She couldn't work, couldn't focus, couldn't pretend everything was normal. She wandered through the house, seeing it with new eyes. The kitchen renovation they'd argued about, but ultimately agreed on. The backyard deck Grant had built himself, spending weekends measuring and cutting and hammering. The guest room they'd painted together, laughing when she got blue on his nose. Every room held evidence of a partnership that apparently only she had believed in. In Grant's office, she stood in the doorway, not quite willing to cross the threshold. His desk was neat, organized, blueprints rolled and stored, pencils in a holder. A framed photo of them from their honeymoon in Greece. She was 23 in that photo. So young, so stupidly optimistic, looking at Grant like he hung the moon. Had she stopped looking at him like that? When? And did it matter? Did her career focus give him permission to cheat? The rationalization made her angry all over again. No, absolutely not. If he was unhappy, he should have talked to her, suggested counseling, done literally anything except seek comfort in another woman's bed. But even as she thought it, a small, traitorous voice whispered, "When would he have talked to you? When you were working late? During your business trips? When you were too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed?" She shoved the voice away. This was not her fault. She would not let him make this her fault. Her phone buzzed. A text this time, not a call. Grant again. "I ended it. With Natalie. Last night. Before I came home. I know that doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know. It's over." Marlene read the message 3 times. He'd ended it. Was she supposed to be grateful? Impressed by his moral fortitude? He'd ended a 6-month affair the night he got caught. What a hero. What an absolute champion of fidelity. She typed back before she could stop herself. "You ended it because you got caught. Don't act like that's some noble gesture." The message showed as delivered, then read. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, his response. "You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I'm just sorry." The dots appeared again. "Do you want me to come home? Or stay away? Tell me what you need." What did she need? The question was almost funny. She needed to go back in time, to 6 months ago, to stop whatever moment had led Grant into Natalie's arms. But since that wasn't possible, what did she actually need? Space, clarity, answers, revenge. All of it and none of it. She needed this to not have happened. She needed to not be a woman whose husband cheated. Needed to not be facing the exact situation she'd sworn she'd handle with dignity and strength. "I need time," she typed back. "Stay at the hotel. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk." If she was ever ready to talk. The thought of sitting across from him, having a rational conversation about his affair, made her want to vomit, but they'd have to eventually. There were practical matters. finances, the house. Their lives were too intertwined to just walk away. Or were they? Maybe that was just fear talking. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over at 38. Fear of admitting failure. Jennifer had stayed, worked it out with her husband. They seemed happy now, or at least content. Marlene had judged that choice so harshly, thought Jennifer was weak, settling. But standing here in her empty house, facing the reality of dismantling 15 years, weak didn't seem like the right word anymore. Maybe it took more strength to stay than to leave, to forgive the unforgivable, to rebuild what had been broken. Or maybe that was just rationalization, the mind's desperate attempt to find a narrative that didn't end in complete devastation. She caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror, still in jeans and a sweater, no makeup, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked like someone in crisis, like those women she'd pitied. She was one of those women now. The thought should have been crushing. And it was. But underneath the crushing weight was something else, something unexpected. A tiny spark of, what? Curiosity? About who she'd be on the other side of this, whether she'd stay or go, whether she'd be one of the women who forgave or one who walked away with her head held high. 3 days ago, she'd known exactly who she was, what she stood for, what she'd tolerate, and what she wouldn't. Today, she didn't know anything, and maybe, in some twisted way, that was progress. The certainty had been an illusion anyway, a comfortable story she'd told herself about being different, better, stronger. Now the story was gone, and she was just herself, flawed, confused, human, facing an impossible choice with no good answers. Her phone buzzed one more time. Not Grant this time. Ivy. Actually, forget the Henderson account. I need real coffee and real conversation. Your place in 20 minutes? I'm bringing pastries. Marlene's first instinct was to say no, to hide, to keep this private. But maybe that was the old Marlene, the one who pretended everything was perfect. Maybe the new Marlene, whoever she turned out to be, could admit when her life was falling apart. She texted back, "Come over. I'll make coffee." Then she went to the kitchen and measured out the grounds with shaking hands, wondering how she'd possibly explain to her best friend that everything she'd been so sure about had crumbled in the space of one night, wondering if she even could. Ivy arrived 18 minutes later with a bag of croissants and the kind of smile that faded the moment she saw Marlene's face. "Okay, what happened?" She didn't even make it past the foyer before the question came out. No small talk, no pretense. That was Ivy, direct when it mattered. She set the pastries on the hall table and crossed her arms, waiting. Marlene opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "Grant's been having an affair." The words came out flat, emotionless, like she was reporting the weather or reading a grocery list. Ivy's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, disbelief, fury. She grabbed Marlene's arm and steered her toward the living room. "Sit, talk, start from the beginning." So Marlene did. She told her about the phone, the messages, the confrontation at 2 in the morning, 6 months with someone named Natalie, Grant's face when he realized he'd been caught, the pathetic justifications, the hotel. All of it tumbled out in a messy, non-chronological stream, while Ivy sat beside her on the couch, holding her hand and looking progressively more murderous. When Marlene finally stopped talking, Ivy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very calmly, "I'm going to kill him." Despite everything, Marlene almost laughed. "Get in line." Ivy squeezed her hand harder. "I'm serious." "Grant? Perfect Grant? Grant who brings you coffee every morning and remembers everyone's birthdays?" Her voice was rising. "That Grant has been sneaking around for 6 months? I can't even process this. How are you so calm?" "I'm not calm." Marlene's voice cracked. "I'm in shock. There's a difference." And then, finally, the tears came. Not the pretty kind. The ugly, choking kind that made her whole body shake. Ivy pulled her close and just held her while she sobbed. No platitudes, no empty reassurances, just solid, steady presence. When Marlene could breathe again, Ivy pulled back and looked at her seriously. "What do you need? Name it. Anything." "I don't know." Marlene wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. "So much for maintaining any dignity. I don't know what I need. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know anything anymore." Ivy disappeared into the kitchen and came back with wine. At 10 in the morning, Marlene raised an eyebrow. "It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and I think this qualifies as an emergency." She poured 2 very full glasses and handed one to Marlene. "Okay, let's think this through logically." "Logically?" Marlene took a long drink. The wine was terrible, too sweet. She didn't care. "There's nothing logical about this situation." Ivy settled back on the couch, tucking her legs underneath her. "Humor me. What are your options? You can leave him. You can try to work it out. Or you can torture him for a while and then decide." She paused. "Personally, I vote for option 3, with a strong lean toward option 1. Marlene stared into her wine glass like it might contain answers. 3 months ago, I told Jennifer that any woman who stayed after infidelity was weak. I said I'd never tolerate it, that I had too much self-respect. She looked up at Ivy. I was so sure, so absolutely certain I'd just walk away. Ivy's expression softened. And now? Now, I don't know. Now it's not theoretical. It's my life, my house, my 15 years. And it's not simple. It is simple, though. Ivy's voice was gentle but firm. He cheated. For 6 months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice he made over and over. Every time he lied to you. Every time he texted her. Every time he... You know, those were all choices. Marlene flinched. I know. Logically, I know that. But there's all this other stuff. We own this house together. Our finances are completely merged. Our friends. Our lives. Untangling all of that. Starting over at 38. It's terrifying. So you stay out of fear? Ivy wasn't judging. Just asking. Marlene appreciated that. Maybe? I don't know. Is that what I'm doing? She took another drink. Or maybe I'm staying because 15 years means something. Because we've built a life. Because despite everything, there's still, I don't know, something. She couldn't even name it. Love? Habit? Delusion? All of the above? Ivy was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Something I never told anyone? Marlene nodded. Remember when I broke up with Marcus senior year? I told everyone it was mutual, that we'd grown apart. Marlene remembered. They'd all believed it. He cheated on me, with my roommate. I found out the same way you did. Saw messages on his phone, and I forgave him. We got back together. Marlene stared. What? You never said anything? Because I was ashamed. Because I'd always said I'd never tolerate that. And then when it happened to me, I made excuses. He was stressed about finals. We'd been fighting. She came on to him. All the justifications cheaters use, I bought them. Ivy's eyes were distant, remembering. We lasted another 3 months. Then he did it again. Different girl. Same lies. That's when I finally left. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Marlene felt guilty for every time she'd judged Jennifer. Every time she'd been so sure of what she'd do. Why are you telling me this? Ivy met her eyes. Because I don't want you to think staying makes you weak. It doesn't. But I also don't want you to stay for the wrong reasons. I stayed because I was scared. Because I didn't want to admit failure. Because I thought love was supposed to be enough. It wasn't. So, what are you saying? That I should leave? Marlene wanted someone to just tell her what to do. To make the decision for her. I'm saying you need to figure out why you'd stay. If it's because you genuinely think the marriage is worth saving, that's one thing. If it's because you're scared or embarrassed or don't want to be alone, that's different. Ivy reached for the wine bottle and topped off both their glasses. Only you know the answer to that. Marlene's phone buzzed. Another text from Grant. Please just talk to me, even if it's to yell. I deserve that. I deserve whatever you want to throw at me. Just don't shut me out. She showed the text to Ivy, who made a disgusted sound. "Oh, he deserves it? How noble! He's not the victim here, Marlene. I know that, but did she? Part of her wanted to comfort him, to reassure him that they'd figure it out. That instinct horrified her. Why was she worried about his feelings? You're doing it again." Ivy's voice cut through her thoughts. "Doing what? Taking care of him. Worrying about him. I can see it on your face. He betrayed you, and you're still trying to manage his emotions." She wasn't wrong. Marlene had spent 15 years being Grant's partner, supporting him, considering his needs. Those patterns didn't just disappear because he'd cheated. "I don't know how to stop." Then maybe you need space, real space, to figure out what you want without him in your ear playing the repentant husband. Ivy pulled out her phone. "My cousin has a place in the mountains, a cabin. She barely uses it. You could go there. Take a week. No Grant, no work, just you and your thoughts." The idea was terrifying and appealing. I can't just disappear. Why not? What's stopping you? What was stopping her? Work, responsibilities, the fear of being alone with her thoughts. "I have meetings next week. The Sanderson pitch." Ivy gave her a look. "Reschedule. Tell them you have the flu. Tell them the truth. I don't care. But don't use work as an excuse to avoid dealing with this." She was right. Marlene knew she was right. "Okay, maybe. Let me think about it." They sat in silence for a while, drinking wine that was too sweet and eating croissants that had gone cold. Normal things, comforting things, except nothing felt normal anymore. Ivy's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and grimaced. "It's work. I have to take this." She stepped into the kitchen, leaving Marlene alone with her thoughts. Dangerous territory. Marlene picked up her own phone, scrolled through photos. Her and Grant at the beach last summer, at her company holiday party, at their friend's wedding. They looked happy in every picture, genuinely happy. Had he been thinking about Natalie in any of these moments? Had he been comparing them, wishing he was somewhere else? The thought made her physically ill. She deleted the photos. Not all of them, just the recent ones. The ones from the last 6 months. The ones that were lies. Ivy came back looking apologetic. "I have to go into the office. Crisis with the Henderson account. Can you believe it?" She grabbed her bag, but hesitated. "Will you be okay? I can tell them to handle it themselves." Marlene forced a smile. "I'll be fine. Go. Work drama is easier than life drama anyway." Ivy hugged her hard. "Call me if you need anything. I mean it. 3 in the morning. I don't care. Call me." After Ivy left, the house felt even emptier. Marlene wandered back to Grant's office. This time she crossed the threshold, sat in his chair, opened his desk drawers. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Evidence? More lies? Proof that he'd been planning this? The first drawer had the usual office supplies: pens, stapler, sticky notes. The second drawer had files, project folders. Nothing interesting. The third drawer was locked. Her heart started racing. Why would he lock a drawer? What was in there? She pulled harder, but it didn't budge. Looked around for a key. Found nothing. The rational part of her brain said to stop, to respect his privacy. The irrational part, the part that had found those messages last night, wanted to break the drawer open, wanted to know every secret, every lie, every hidden thing. She went to the garage and found a screwdriver, came back and jimmied the lock. It took longer than it should have. Her hands were shaking. Finally, the drawer popped open. Inside were more files. She pulled them out, expecting bank statements or secret credit cards or love letters. Instead, she found something that made her stop breathing. Brochures for marriage counselors, printed articles about saving relationships, a notebook with Grant's handwriting, dates going back 8 months, before the affair started. She opened the notebook with trembling hands. The first entry was dated February 14th, Valentine's Day, 8 months ago. Marlene worked through dinner again. "I know the promotion is important to her. I'm proud of her. But I miss her. I miss us. I don't know how to tell her without sounding needy or making her feel guilty. Maybe I should suggest counseling, but she'd take that as criticism, as failure. I don't know what to do. Marlene felt like she'd been punched. She flipped through more entries. March 3rd. Tried to talk to Marlene about feeling disconnected. She said she was just stressed about work. Promised things would slow down after the Jennings contract. I want to believe that. March 27th. Things haven't slowed down. If anything, she's working more. I feel invisible in my own marriage. Is this just what happens after 15 years? Do we just become roommates who split bills? April 10th. Met the new hire on the Riverside project, Natalie. She laughed at my jokes. Actually listened when I talked about the design challenges. It felt good to be heard, to be seen. I know that's dangerous thinking. I know. But God, I'm lonely. Marlene's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the notebook. She wanted to stop reading. Couldn't stop reading. April 28th. I think I'm in trouble. Natalie and I have been working late together. It's just work, but I look forward to it. To her. That can't be good. May 5th. I should stop this before it goes too far. I should talk to Marlene. Tell her I'm struggling. But when? She's either working or exhausted. And what would I even say? Your career success is making me feel irrelevant? How pathetic does that sound? May 19th. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Natalie kissed me after we finished the Riverside presentation. I kissed her back. It was wrong. I know it was wrong. But for 5 minutes, I felt wanted, desired, like I mattered to someone. I'm a terrible person. Marlene closed the notebook, set it down carefully, even though she wanted to throw it across the room. This was worse. Somehow, this was worse than just finding out about the affair. Because now, she could see it. The slow disintegration. The warning signs she'd missed. He'd been reaching out, trying to tell her he was struggling, and she'd been too busy to notice, too focused on her career, too certain that their marriage was solid enough to survive her absence. But that didn't make it okay. It didn't excuse 6 months of lying, of betrayal, of choosing someone else. He could have tried harder, could have insisted on counseling, could have done anything except seek comfort in another woman's arms. Couldn't he? Or had she made it impossible? Had she been so wrapped up in her own world that he felt he had no choice? No, that was the rationalization talking again. Everyone has choices. He'd chosen this. Her phone rang. Grant. She answered before she could stop herself. I found your notebook. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, what notebook? The one in your locked drawer. The one where you documented our marriage falling apart while I was too busy to notice. Her voice was shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you make me listen? I tried. His voice was rough. You were always too busy, too stressed, too tired. I didn't want to add to your burden. So you found someone who wasn't a burden? Someone easy and uncomplicated who made you feel special? The words came out bitter, cruel, true. It wasn't like that. Or maybe it was. I don't know. I'm not trying to justify it, Marlene. There's no justification. But yes, I was lonely. And yes, she paid attention to me. And yes, I was weak enough to let it matter. Marlene walked to the window, looked out at the backyard Grant had spent weekends maintaining. You said in your notebook that you were in trouble in April, that you should stop it before it went too far. Why didn't you? A long pause. Because part of me didn't want to. Part of me wanted to feel that way. Wanted and excited and alive. I know how that sounds. I know. But you asked for honesty. The honesty hurt worse than the lies. So what now? You've ended it with her. You're sorry. You feel terrible. And I'm supposed to what? Forgive you? Take you back? Pretend the last 6 months didn't happen? She could hear him breathing on the other end, considering his words. I don't know. I don't have a right to ask for anything. But I want to try. If you'll let me, I want to fight for us. You should have fought for us before you slept with someone else. The response was automatic. But even as she said it, a small voice whispered that maybe she should have fought too, should have noticed, should have made time, should have seen her husband drowning and thrown him a lifeline instead of assuming he could tread water indefinitely. "You're right," Grant said quietly. "You're absolutely right. But I'm fighting now, if it's not too late." Was it too late? That was the question. The only question that mattered. Marlene looked around Grant's office, at the evidence of his unhappiness that she'd missed, at the locked drawer and the notebook and the brochures for counseling he'd never had the courage to suggest, at 15 years of marriage that had somehow become more about coexistence than connection. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to think, without you calling or texting or trying to fix this." "Okay." He sounded defeated. "Small. Whatever you need. However long you need." Marlene ended the call, sat in his chair, stared at the notebook that changed everything and nothing. Because knowing he'd been unhappy didn't erase the betrayal. Understanding the context didn't make the pain less sharp, but it complicated things, made the decision harder, made her question everything she'd been so sure about just days ago. She thought about Ivy's cousin's cabin, about space and silence, and figuring out who she was without Grant's voice in her head, about whether she was strong enough to stay, or brave enough to leave, or wise enough to know the difference. Marlene spent 3 days at Ivy's cousin's cabin in the mountains. 3 days of silence so complete, it was almost painful. No Grant, no work emails, no well-meaning friends offering advice, just her, and the weight of an impossible decision. She hiked through pine forests until her legs ached, sat on the porch, watching fog roll through the valleys, made coffee every morning and remembered how Grant used to bring it to her in bed, back when small gestures still meant something, back before they'd become two people living parallel lives under the same roof. On the second night, she read through Grant's notebook again, cover to cover, every entry documenting his loneliness, his struggle, his slow slide into infidelity, and she forced herself to remember those months from her own perspective. The Jennings contract that had consumed her life, the promotion she'd worked 10 years to earn, the late nights and early mornings and weekends spent preparing presentations. She'd been so focused on building her career that she'd stopped building her marriage. That was true, undeniably true, but it still didn't excuse what he'd done. She called her mother on the third morning, told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Then her mother said something Marlene hadn't expected. "Do you love him?" Not did she forgive him. Not what was she going to do. Just, did she love him? Marlene watched steam rise from her coffee cup and thought about the question. "I don't know anymore. I love who he was, who we were, but I don't know if I love who he became. Someone who could lie to me for 6 months. That's fair," her mother said. "But here's what I learned from my divorce. You can't decide whether to stay or go based on what he did. You have to decide based on what you can live with. Can you live with the memory of this betrayal? Can you look at him in 5 years and not see Natalie? Can you rebuild trust? Or will you spend the rest of your marriage checking his phone and wondering where he really is?" The questions hit like arrows. Accurate, painful, true. "I judged Jennifer so harshly when her husband cheated," Marlene said quietly. "I thought she was weak for staying. But now I understand. It's not about strength or weakness. It's about what you can carry, what weight you're willing to bear." Her mother made a thoughtful sound. "Jennifer's still married, isn't she? Are they happy?" Marlene thought about it. "I think so. Or at least they seem to be. She told me once that forgiveness was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Harder than leaving would have been." There's your answer then. Staying isn't the easy choice. It's actually harder. It requires daily forgiveness, daily choice, daily recommitment to someone who broke your trust. Her mother paused. Only you can decide if he's worth that work. If the marriage you had, the life you built, the man you fell in love with is still in there somewhere underneath the terrible choices. Marlene felt tears sliding down her face. What if I forgive him and he does it again? What if I'm just being naive? Then you leave, with your head held high, knowing you tried everything. But Marlene, baby, what if you don't forgive him? What if you walk away and spend the rest of your life wondering if you gave up too easily? If your pride was more important than your marriage? Those words lodged in Marlene's chest like a splinter. I don't know if I'm strong enough to stay. Her mother laughed softly. Sweetheart, you're one of the strongest people I know. The question isn't whether you're strong enough. It's whether he's worth it. After they hung up, Marlene sat on the porch for hours, watching the sun move across the sky, thinking about 15 years of marriage. The good parts, the beautiful parts. Their wedding day when Grant had cried during his vows. The night they'd bought this house and made love on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. The miscarriage 3 years ago that had nearly broken them both, but somehow made them closer. The 1,000 small moments that built a life. Were those moments erased by 6 months of betrayal? Or did they still count for something? He thought about Natalie, tried to hate her, but couldn't quite manage it. Natalie was just a woman who'd met an unhappy man and seen an opportunity. Grant was the one who'd made vows, who'd promised forsaking all others. The affair was his responsibility, his choice, his failure. But Marlene's absence, her neglect, her assumption that their marriage could run on autopilot while she focused on her career, that was hers. They'd both failed, just in different ways. On the 4th morning, Marlene packed her bag and drove back to the city. She didn't call Grant, didn't warn him she was coming, just pulled into the driveway of the house they'd shared for 12 years and sat in the car, gathering courage. The house looked the same, normal, like the foundation of her entire life hadn't cracked wide open inside those walls. She went inside, set her bag down, and called Grant's number. He answered on the first ring. Marlene, just her name, heavy with hope and fear and desperation. Come home, she said. We need to talk. Really talk. Not fight. Not accuse. Just talk. There was a pause. She could hear him moving, gathering things. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Marlene spent those 20 minutes straightening the house, making coffee, trying to calm her racing heart. When his key turned in the lock, she was sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd eaten breakfast together 1,000 times, where they'd paid bills and planned vacations and argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Grant looked terrible. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was a mess. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter. Sit down, Marlene said. Her voice was calmer than she felt. He sat across from her, hands folded on the table like a child awaiting punishment. She poured him coffee, added cream the way he liked it. The gesture was automatic, muscle memory from 15 years of partnership. I read your entire notebook, she started. Every entry. I saw how unhappy you were, how lonely, how you tried to reach out, and I was too busy to notice. Grant opened his mouth, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. I understand now that I neglected our marriage, that I took you for granted, that I assumed you'd always be there while I focused on everything else. That was wrong. I own that. But Grant, you still had choices. You could have insisted on counseling. You could have told me point blank that our marriage was in trouble. You could have given me an ultimatum. Anything except sleeping with someone else. I know, he said quietly. I know. There's no excuse. Marlene wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Here's what I've realized over the past few days. I can't change what you did. You can't take it back. We can't go back to before. That marriage, that version of us, is gone. The question is whether we can build something new, something different, something honest. She looked at him directly. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can look at you and not see her. But I think, maybe, I want to try. Hope flickered across Grant's face. Really? Marlene held up her hand again. I have conditions, non-negotiable conditions. First, complete transparency. Your phone, your email, your schedule. I need access to everything until I can trust you again. And that might take years, Grant. Years of proving yourself. He nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need. Second, counseling. Real counseling. Not just a few sessions. However long it takes. We clearly have communication problems, and I'm not doing this without professional help. Agreed, Grant said. I already looked up therapists, made a list of ones who specialize in infidelity recovery. Marlene was surprised. You did? He pulled out his phone, showed her a note with names and numbers. I've had a lot of time to think, too, about what I'd do if you gave me another chance. What I'd need to do to deserve it. She nodded slowly. Third condition. You don't get to make me feel guilty for not trusting you, for checking up on you, for having bad days where I'm angry all over again. You did this. You broke us. I'm willing to try to fix it, but you don't get to complain about the repair process. I understand. His voice was thick with emotion. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you if you let me. Marlene took a deep breath. And fourth, I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. I will never forget this. It will always be part of our story, on our good days and our bad days, when things are easy and when they're hard. This will always be there. If you can't live with that, if you need me to just get over it and move on, then we should end this now. Grant reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand, waiting for permission. She let him take it. His fingers were warm, familiar. I can live with that, he said. I'll carry the weight of what I did for the rest of our lives if it means I get to keep you, if it means we get another chance. Marlene felt tears building, but refused to let them fall. Not yet. This isn't me saying everything's okay. It's not okay. You devastated me, destroyed my trust, made me question everything I thought I knew about us. I know, Grant whispered. I'm so sorry. So incredibly sorry. She pulled her hand back, needed space, needed to say the rest. But I also realized something. I loved being self-righteous, loved judging other women who stayed after infidelity. It made me feel superior, strong, like I had it all figured out. The truth is, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how complicated love is, how messy, how the heart wants what it wants even when the brain says to walk away. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the backyard where they'd planned to build a deck extension next summer. I'm not staying because I'm weak. I'm not staying because I'm scared to be alone. I'm staying because, despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies and the pain, there's still something here worth fighting for. But Grant, if you ever, and I mean ever, do anything like this again, I'm gone. No second chances. No explanations. We're done. Grant stood too, kept his distance. I swear to you, on everything I am, this will never happen again. I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice, that I'm worth this chance. Marlene turned to face him. I hope so, because I'm choosing to believe in us, in the marriage we had, and the marriage we could have, but I'm also choosing myself. If this doesn't work, if you can't do the work, if I can't heal, I'm not going to stay, just because it's easier than leaving. Fair enough. Grant took a tentative step closer. Can I hug you? Or is it too soon? Marlene considered. Every cell in her body wanted to maintain distance, to protect herself. But she also knew that healing would require vulnerability, require risk. She nodded. Grant crossed the space between them and wrapped his arms around her. She stood stiff at first, then slowly, carefully, let herself lean into him. He smelled like hotel soap and desperation and home. She let herself cry then, not for what they'd lost, but for what they might still save. They stood there for a long time, not talking, just holding each other. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a fragile, terrifying, hopeful beginning. When they finally pulled apart, Marlene wiped her eyes. I made an appointment with a therapist for Thursday at 4. Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She specializes in couples recovering from infidelity. We're both going. Grant nodded. I'll be there. I'll be wherever you need me to be. Good, because this is going to be hard. Harder than anything we've done. There will be days I hate you. Days I want to throw you out all over again. Days I question whether I'm making a huge mistake. She looked at him seriously. Are you prepared for that? For the real work of rebuilding trust? Grant met her eyes. Yes, I'm prepared. I know I don't deserve this chance, but I'm going to prove that I can be the husband you deserve. The man you fell in love with. Better than him, even. Marlene managed a small smile. Her first real smile in days. We'll see. Actions matter now, Grant. Not words, not promises. What you do every single day from this point forward. That's what matters. She picked up her coffee cup, took a sip. It had gone cold. I'm going to finish unpacking. You can move your things back from the hotel, but you're sleeping in the guest room for now. I'm not ready to share a bed yet. Of course, whatever you need, whatever timeline works for you. Grant looked around the kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you for not giving up on us. She set down her cup. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in a year if we're still together and actually happy. Thank me in 5 years if we've built something real, something honest, something better than what we had before. As she walked upstairs to unpack, Marlene thought about Jennifer, about all the women she'd judged, about how easy it was to have convictions when you weren't the one being tested. She pulled out her phone and sent Jennifer a text. I owe you an apology. I judged you for staying with your husband after his affair. I thought I understood. I didn't. I'm sorry. The response came quickly. You're going through it now, aren't you? Marlene typed back. Yes. Jennifer's next message made her cry all over again. You're stronger than you know. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Marlene sat on the edge of the bed. Their bed. The one they'd shared for 15 years. The one that would never feel quite the same. She thought about the woman she'd been a week ago. So certain. So self-righteous. So convinced she'd never be one of those women who stayed. That woman was gone. In her place was someone more complicated, more humble, more human. Someone who understood that love wasn't simple, that marriage was work, that forgiveness was a choice you made every day, not once. She didn't know if this would work. Didn't know if she could truly forgive Grant, or if the betrayal would poison everything they tried to rebuild. But she knew she had to try. Not for him, not for their friends, or her parents, or anyone else. For herself, because she needed to know that she'd done everything possible. That if it ended, it wouldn't be because she gave up too easily, or let pride destroy something worth saving. She needed to know she'd fought for her marriage the way she'd once promised she would, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for all the days that came after the worst day. 3 months later, Marlene and Grant sat in Dr. Mitchell's office for their weekly session. They'd made progress, slow, painful progress. Grant had been true to his word, complete transparency. Every text message, every email, every moment of his day accounted for. It chafed sometimes, felt controlling, but Marlene needed it, needed the proof that he was choosing her, choosing them, choosing honesty. They'd had setbacks, days where Marlene spiraled, where she screamed at him about Natalie, where she demanded to know every detail of the affair, even though the details destroyed her. Days where Grant broke down crying, overwhelmed by guilt. Days where they both wondered if they were crazy for trying. But they'd also had good days, days where they laughed together, where they remembered why they'd fallen in love, where the future felt possible instead of terrifying. Dr. Mitchell had taught them to communicate, really communicate, to say the hard things, to ask for what they needed, to acknowledge pain without letting it consume everything. It was working, slowly, incrementally, but it was working. Grant had learned to be present, to put down his phone, to ask about Marlene's day and actually listen. Marlene had learned to let him in, to be vulnerable, to admit when she was struggling instead of pretending everything was fine. 6 months after that terrible Wednesday morning, Marlene threw away Grant's notebook, not out of anger, out of acceptance. She didn't need to keep rereading his descent into infidelity, didn't need to torture herself with the timeline. What mattered was now, what they were building, the marriage they were creating from the ashes of the one that had burned down. It would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, it could be better, more honest, more intentional, more real. A year later, they renewed their vows. Not a big ceremony, just them and Dr. Mitchell and Ivy and Marlene's mother. Simple words, honest promises. Grant cried through the entire thing. Marlene did too, but these were different tears. Not grief, not betrayal, hope, fragile, hard-won, precious hope. When Grant slipped a new ring on her finger, Marlene looked at him and saw not the man who'd betrayed her, but the man who'd fought to keep her, who'd done the impossible work of earning back trust, who showed up every single day, ready to prove his commitment. That night, lying in bed together for the first time in over a year, Grant pulled her close. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me another chance, for being strong enough to stay, for fighting for us when it would have been easier to walk away." Marlene turned to face him. "Thank you for being worth fighting for doing the work, for understanding that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. And I choose you every day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days." She thought about the woman she'd been, the one who'd said with such conviction that she'd never forgive infidelity. That woman had been naive, untested, living in a world of black and white where choices were simple and strength meant walking away. The woman she'd become understood nuance, understood that sometimes staying required more courage than leaving. That forgiveness was a radical act. That love, real love, meant choosing someone even when they'd broken your heart. Marlene had learned the hardest lesson of her life, that you never really know what you'll do until you're standing in the wreckage of your own marriage, trying to decide whether to salvage what's left or start completely over. That judgment is easy when it's not your life imploding. That the women she'd pitied were actually warriors, stronger than she'd ever given them credit for. Because staying after betrayal, rebuilding after devastation, that took everything you had, and then some. She'd also learned that she wasn't weak for choosing to forgive, wasn't pathetic for wanting to save her marriage, wasn't a doormat for giving Grant another chance. She was human, flawed, complicated, capable of holding both the pain of betrayal and the possibility of redemption in the same heart. And maybe that was the real strength, not having all the answers, not being certain, but choosing love anyway, choosing to try, choosing to believe that broken things could be mended even if they'd never be quite the same. As she drifted off to sleep in Grant's arms, Marlene felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. Not the ignorant peace of before when she'd assumed her marriage was solid, but the hard-earned peace of someone who'd walked through fire and come out the other side. Scarred, changed, stronger. She'd faced her worst nightmare and survived it. More than survived. She'd chosen to thrive in spite of it. And that choice, that daily, difficult, courageous choice to keep fighting for her marriage, to keep fighting for herself, made all the difference. The next morning, over coffee that Grant brought to her in bed, Marlene called Jennifer. "I wanted to tell you something," she said when Jennifer answered. "I misjudged you. I misjudged every woman who's ever chosen to stay and fight for her marriage after betrayal. You're not weak. You're incredibly strong. Stronger than I ever was when I thought I had all the answers." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for saying that. How are you doing?" "Really? Better," Marlene said honestly. "Not perfect. We still have hard days, but we're building something real, something honest, something that might actually last. Because we're not taking it for granted anymore. She paused. I'm sorry it took me going through it to understand what you went through, but I get it now. I really get it. Jennifer's voice was warm. We're having coffee next week. You can tell me all about it. And Marlene, I'm proud of you. Whatever you decided, stay or go, I would have been proud. But I'm especially proud that you chose what was right for you, not what everyone else expected. That was it, Marlene realized. That was the real victory. Not staying, not leaving, but choosing. Actually choosing instead of just reacting. Instead of doing what she'd always said she'd do, or what her pride demanded, or what would look good to other people. She'd chosen based on love, based on hope, based on the belief that 15 years of partnership meant something, that the man she'd married was still in there somewhere underneath the terrible choices. And he was. She'd found him again. They'd found each other again. Different versions of themselves, more honest, more humble, more aware of how easily it could all fall apart. Marlene Ashford had always been the woman with answers, the one who knew exactly what she'd do in every hypothetical situation. But life, she'd learned, wasn't hypothetical. It was messy and complicated and full of impossible choices between bad options. And sometimes the right choice wasn't the one that looked strong from the outside. Sometimes it was the one that felt true on the inside, the one that let you sleep at night, the one that let you look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. She'd always said with conviction that she'd never forgive a betrayal until fate played its trick and she had to actually decide, had to choose between her pride and her marriage, between what she'd always said and what her heart needed. And in the end, she chose love. Messy, complicated, difficult, imperfect love. The kind that survives catastrophe, not because it's easy, but because both people refuse to let it die. That was strength. That was courage. That was the real meaning of forsaking all others, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. Not just in the good times, especially in the worst times, when everything falls apart and you have to decide whether to walk away or dig in and fight. Marlene had chosen to fight, and every single day, she chose it again. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.